Hey everybody, my name's Tim. I'm delighted to be with you for this really important conversation today. If you've got a Bible, open it up to the book of 1 Chronicles. I'm reading from chapter 12 and verse 32, which tells us that from the tribe of Issachar, there were 200 leaders of the tribe with their relatives. And all these men understood the signs of the times and knew the best course for Israel to take. And surely that's why you and I have gathered online for this Now What conference today, because we want to take some time to reflect on and understand the signs of these crazy times so that we might know the best course for the church and for our youth ministries to take. So, what just happened? What are the signs of these unusual times and what are we going to do about it? Well, I don't know if you remember that just over a year ago, there was a craze going around on Instagram called the 10-year challenge, where people would post a photo of what they looked like 10 years ago and what they look like today. Well, I decided to take a little bit of a different approach to the 10-year challenge when I posted this picture. And I posted this picture because it accurately sums up how I can divide my life into two entirely different worlds. There was a pre-kids world and a post-kids world. Because when I had my first child, literally overnight, my world was changed forever. And I believe that the same thing is happening right now, but not just for me. We are living through a truly defining moment in the history of our nation and the nations of the world, where even in 100 years' time, when we're all long gone, they will still look back at this moment we're living through and remember the pandemic that swept the world. And even in a couple of decades' time, you and I will be able to look back and I believe we will see a pre-COVID world and a post-COVID world. We will be able to reflect upon how almost overnight our world was changed forever. And it's for this reason that I believe that some of the models of ministry that served us in the old world will no longer serve us in the new. And that in order to effectively reach and disciple in the years to come, we must be willing to adopt entirely new approaches. But I need to put the brakes on. I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let's just take a moment to reflect on what just happened. Believe it or not, it was not so long ago, though it feels like a lifetime ago, that you and I were happily going along as normal when all of a sudden the things that we in youth ministry have always placed so much value upon, almost all of which involve some form of gathering together, were taken away from us overnight. And we entered into a new world, didn't we, where Zoom became our best friend and our worst enemy. And I don't know about you, but personally, I found it exhausting. I was getting headaches from being on Zoom all day. I couldn't keep up with all of the email, iMessage, WhatsApp, Microsoft Teams and Messenger chats that were popping off. And, you know, even in amongst all of that, we had some early failures along the way too. I remember right at the start of the lockdown, we thought it would be a good idea to host an online learning community where youth leaders could come together and work out how we were going to adapt and change to this new world and do youth ministry online. And we had a bunch of leaders log in, but we also had some people log in who were only there to disrupt the meeting. And it was horrible. They shared some explicit images. They were using awful language. And it was just this harrowing experience. Really, I remember meeting the team directly afterwards to work out what we were going to do, and I was physically trembling. It was a horrible experience. And in amongst all of this, we were making a major decision as well. One that seems so obvious now, but at the time, the decision to cancel Limitless Festival was huge. Our team had poured so much of their life, their time, their energy, and their prayer into Limitless Festival 2020, and whilst cancelling it was ultimately the only thing we could do, it was so hard not to think of the thousands of young people who had already booked in that it felt like we were letting down. Strangely though, as disappointing as it was, cancelling Limitless Festival wasn't the thing I found most disheartening at that period of time. It was the fact that just like you, my whole life had moved online and I hated it. I hated that people were talking about views and engagements as though they were an adequate indicator for success in the kingdom of God. I very, very quickly became totally contented out. And as I spoke to exhausted youth leaders all over the UK, exhausted from producing and consuming content, I couldn't help but wonder if we were all working really, really hard to produce content that young people didn't actually want or need, as the attendances of young people online were gradually diminishing all over the nation, including in my own context. And all of this culminated in the fact that for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't actually enjoying the job that I'm so privileged to do. I was frustrated at the unpredictable nature of the months and years ahead. I had many more questions than I had answers. And unlike the men of Issachar, I did not know the best course to take. To be honest, I felt like I was leading poorly. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I felt flat. I felt lost. And I wanted to share that with you, not so that you could feel sorry for me, but rather to say that though you would have had some unique challenges, and though we will have had some shared challenges, to some extent, all of us have felt like that. And I wanted to say to you that if you have felt like that, or even if you feel like that still, I want you to know that I get it. I want you to know that it's okay. But at the same time and with the same breath, I want to encourage us today that we mustn't stay in that place. And so as we reflect on what just happened and how it's impacted our lives, it's also incumbent upon us to ask, what does it mean for what must happen next? Or in other words, what do these signs of the times reveal to us about the best course to take? Well, during this time, we've seen a couple of trends that, though on the surface may appear to be a simple cause and effect of the season, I believe are actually symptomatic of something much, much deeper. What have we seen? We've seen that over time, young people have gradually disengaged from our online contact and content, and this has been the case across demographics and denominations. And we've also seen that the first young people to have disengaged have been those who are not connected to our churches via their parents or families. Now, there are, of course, exceptions to every rule, but these are undoubtedly the trends. So what are these signs of the times revealing to us? And what is the best course for us to take? Well, I've got 4 thoughts for you today, 4 potentially controversial and hopefully stimulating thoughts about what the future might need to look like in this new world. And the first is that the future is not online. Now, you and I, we've placed ourselves entirely online in our youth ministries because we've had to, and there's been no other way to stay connected to our young people. And yet, what we didn't see coming is that in doing so, we've placed ourselves in direct competition with countless other applications and notifications that are screaming for the attention of our young people. And this is just one of the reasons why I believe that the future is not online, but rather the future is in radical community and supernatural expectancy. Why do I believe that? Because you see, the world can compete and can readily outdo our entertainment-based groups and our online videos, but it has no substitute for beautifully diverse and unusually united families through which and in which the supernatural power of the Holy Spirit is regularly at work in signs and wonders. Friends, this is unique to you and I, the church, and it cannot be imitated or replicated in the world. And I know that the gravitational pull on you and your youth ministry right now is to leverage the online world to attract people to your program. But I believe that the brave and courageous youth leader in the new world will give more attention to setting young people free from digital addiction than creating more and more digital content to grab their attention. I believe that they will give more time to generating fired up communities of faith than generating views and engagements. And they will give more energy to seeking to understand signs and wonders than to understand online algorithms. Yes, the online world is here to stay, and we can and should use it to engage with our young people. But I believe that these signs of the times right now are showing us that perhaps online is not the answer to the change we were looking for after all. The future is not online. Number two, the future is multi-generational. Multi-generational. You know, the fact that the first young people to disengage with our online programs have been those who are not connected to the church via their parents shows us something profoundly important that I do not want you to miss, and it's this: that young people need spiritual parents more than spiritual programs. Young people need spiritual parents more than spiritual programs, and this is why in the new world, the brave youth leader, the brave and courageous youth leader will divert increasing amounts of their time and their energy to raising up spiritual parents with an intense commitment to passing on the gospel to the next generation. Number three, the future is smaller. Now, don't misunderstand me. This is not to say that the church should not strive for growth, nor is it to deny the transcendent and irreplaceable power of the large gathering. But it is to say that those large gatherings are not sufficient on their own for making disciples who make disciples. I believe we need to learn to value the secret and unseen above the public and the celebrated. I believe that even if we have a large group of young people right now, we're going to need to learn how to break it down into environments that are small enough for everybody to be known and to be able to discover and develop their gifts. I believe that in the new world, the brave and courageous youth leader will not confuse what is visible with what is valuable. And instead, they'll develop a spiritual fortitude for doing an unseen thing for his glory. And finally, number four, the future is about making disciples, not programs. I believe that this pandemic has exposed a shocking truth that we must have the courage to embrace and reflect upon, that our models of youth ministry have not been effective in making disciples. See, we have created fantastic event-based programs where young people show up and they have a great time and they feel loved and they feel valued. But we've not done so well at helping young people who are far from God become independent and interdependent followers of Jesus with a robust personal identity in God that is not dependent upon their connection to our groups. Friends, could it be that the fact that we gather people has deceived us into believing that we are making disciples? Is it time to acknowledge, I wonder, that attendance and discipleship are not the same thing? I'm so deeply challenged by this thought from Mike Breed, who said, at the end of the day, the only thing that Jesus is counting is disciples. He doesn't seem to care too much about converts, attendance, budgets, or buildings. It's about disciples. And so in the new world, the brave and courageous youth leader will make everything that they do about making disciples. They will humbly, but also brutally examine their existing programs and ask themselves, is this making disciples? And if it's not achieving that objective, they will have the courage to stop it or change it. As I conclude, I want to share with you a picture that the Lord gave me a number of weeks ago. And the picture was of a big red helium balloon, so visible as it rose up above everything else. But as I looked, the balloon popped. And I looked to the floor, and there were the shards of the balloon strewn over the floor. I thought, oh no, what's happening? But as I looked down at the wreckage, what I saw was a pure nugget of gold in amongst the brokenness. And I think that the balloon represented the models of ministry that we had before, where we most valued the things that were most visible. The pop represented this pandemic, in which suddenly everything that we gave our time to was taken away. But in amongst the wreckage of this season, there is something that may be far less visible, but of infinitely greater value if we would search it out. And so I wanted to finish by saying this to you. If you feel like you're still dwelling in among the wreckage of what just happened, then determine in your heart that you will not leave that place until you have discovered the nugget of gold that God is wanting to reveal to you and give you there. Friends, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to invest in the lives of young people. I can't think of anything more important that you could give your life to. So please keep going and don't give up, because I really believe that together we're going to find a way.